It was a Tuesday, somebody's birthday. One of those restaurant tables where the napkins are heavy and the lighting makes everyone look like they has their life together. I remember the water glass sweating against my wrist. Cold. I kept wiping my palm on my jeans under the table like nobody could see it. Across from you, a guy says it casually, like he's telling you the weather. Maxed my 401k again, 12 years straight. Someone else jumps in, rental property. Closed last summer. Like buying a house is the same as ordering a side dish. Then the third person, brokerage account, some number, a milestone that sounds made up. They laugh. You laugh too, a little late. Your head starts doing math it can't finish. You're nodding, but your ears aren't even in the room anymore. You try to remember your login. You try to remember if you even have a 401k. You picture that one account with the sad little balance, 8 grand maybe, sitting there like a plant you forgot to water. You reach for your wine glass because your hand needs something to do. Later in bed, the room is dark and your eyes keep opening anyway. You stare at the ceiling. Then you look at your phone. Then you flip it face down like that helps. The same thought keeps coming back, like a tooth you can't stop touching. How did they learn this? And when did you miss it? Let me say this plainly, because I've watched this ruin people quietly. You're not lazy. If you were lazy, you wouldn't be lying awake at night replaying numbers. You wouldn't feel that tightness in your chest when someone mentions investing early. Lazy people sleep fine. You're not bad with money either. People who are bad with money don't check their balances. They don't feel that pause before opening a banking app. They don't flinch when an auto pay hits earlier than expected. They don't even notice. And you didn't miss some secret class. There was no seminar in your 20s where everyone else learned how this works and you just skipped it. That story feels true because it hurts, not because it's accurate. I've been in finance for 10 years. I've sat across from people who look confident and put together, people who talk smoothly about strategy. Half of them are improvising. Some are barely holding it together. A few are one bad month away from trouble. The system you're measuring yourself against was built for a different world. One income, cheap housing, stable pensions, predictable careers. That world is gone. But the benchmark stayed. Nobody updated the scoreboard. So now you're standing there, staring at numbers that don't reflect reality, wondering what's wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. This might sound uncomfortable, but I don't think we talk about this enough. Most people feel behind because the rules change mid-game, and shame convinces you it was your fault. It wasn't. There's a sentence that gets repeated like it's gravity. By 40, you should have 3 times your salary saved. It shows up in articles, slides, advisor meetings where the office smells like coffee that's been reheated too many times. Technically, it's true. Practically, it's misleading. I've watched what happens when someone hears that line for the first time and actually does the math. Their shoulders drop a little. Not dramatically, just enough. Like the body already knows the answer before the brain finishes calculating. 3 times your salary assumes a few things nobody says out loud. That your income rose smoothly, that rent didn't double, that you never had a stretch where survival came first and planning came later. It assumes you started early, calmly, with spare cash, with guidance, with time. That assumption is doing a lot of work. Here's what I've seen, sitting across real desks from real people for a decade. The ones who hit those benchmarks early often didn't understand them. They contributed because someone told them to. They didn't adjust. They didn't think. They coasted. The ones who missed them, they noticed. Their stomach tightened. They asked sharper questions. They paid attention in a way the early starters never had to. The rule sounds clean because it ignores context. It ignores layoffs, divorce, parents getting sick, childcare, rent increases that swallow raises whole. It ignores the way money actually moves through a life. I might be wrong, but this doesn't sound like a failure problem. It sounds like a timing myth that refuses to die. Because here's the quiet part nobody says. That rule was written when growth did more of the work than contribution. When starting early mattered more than pressing hard. That's not the world you're in. And when you keep measuring yourself against a number that doesn't account for that, something strange happens. You stop moving. You freeze. You tell yourself there's no point catching up because the finish line feels imaginary anyway. I've seen people with less saved at 40 retire better than people who did everything right at 30. Not because they were lucky, because they stopped worshiping the benchmark and started understanding the mechanics. The myth isn't that saving matters. The myth is that when you start matters more than how you move once you do. That idea still hasn't settled for most people. You can hear it at dinner tables. You can feel it in your chest when the number doesn't line up. It just sits there, unresolved. Let me slow this down, because this is where most people get it wrong. Wealth doesn't grow because time passes. It grows because pressure is applied in the right direction. I've looked at hundreds of real accounts, not models, not projections, actual statements. What moves the needle isn't some clever fund or perfect timing. It's income coming in and how aggressively it's routed. That's it. Compounding gets all the credit, but contribution intensity does the heavy lifting, and especially after 40. Picture two people, same market, same returns, same noise on the news. One contributes a little, consistently, because that's what they set up years ago and never revisited. The other shows up later, but heavier, more deliberate, less casual. The math doesn't care about intentions. It only responds to force. This is the part that doesn't sound comfortable, and I might be wrong, but I don't think we talk about this enough. Starting late forces focus. There's less room for autopilot, less patience for underperforming choices, less tolerance for money leaking out unnoticed. By 40, income is usually higher. Not glamorous, just higher. And that changes everything. Because the system isn't built on percentages, it's built on dollars. A small increase in savings rate at a higher income quietly does what 10 early years of casual contributions never could. No hacks here, no shortcuts. Just a system that rewards clarity over timing. Once you see that, the panic shifts. It doesn't disappear, but it changes shape. It turns into something closer to urgency, something useful. You stop asking, did I start too late? And start asking, how hard am I pressing now? That question doesn't have a comforting answer, but it has an honest one. I'm going to tell you about someone I worked with. I'll call him Marcus. Not because his name matters, because you'd recognize him if he sat down across from you. 40 years old, maybe 41. He wore the same jacket to every meeting. Not cheap, not new, just familiar. He slid his phone across the table once. Not dramatically, screen up, a retirement account. Low five figures, a credit card balance he kept flipping face down like it might crawl away on its own. Nothing had exploded. That was the problem. Good job. Decent income. Bills paid on time. And yet every month ended in the same place. Same checking balance. Same quiet confusion about where it all went. We didn't start with investing. We started with leakage. Subscriptions he forgot about. A car loan he never questioned. Small charges that didn't hurt individually but showed up every single month like they owned him. Within weeks there was space, not excitement, space. Then the debt. Highest interest first, no clever tricks, just pressure in one direction until it stopped moving. When the balance finally hit zero, he didn't celebrate. He stared at the screen longer than expected, like he didn't trust it. Only then did investing enter the picture. Not aggressively, not heroically, just consistently. And then, this part matters, his income moved. Certification, role change, a raise that never touched his lifestyle. By the time he came back in a couple years later, his posture was different. Same jacket, straighter shoulders. The numbers weren't magical, they were explainable, measurable. That's the point. Nothing about his situation was special. No inheritance, no windfall, just sequence. And once he saw it working, he stopped asking if it was too late. He started asking what else was still leaking. That question didn't scare him anymore. It focused him. This is where most people stall. Not because they can't do the work, because they do it out of order. They try to invest while money is still bleeding out in small, invisible ways. They open accounts before closing leaks. Then they wonder why nothing feels stable. Order matters more than effort. First, stop the leaks. The charges you don't remember agreeing to. The interest rates you never renegotiated. The expenses that repeat quietly because no one ever challenged them. Then eliminate high-interest debt. Not because it's shameful, because it's heavy. It drags everything else down. You can feel it every month, even if you don't name it. After that, build a buffer. Real cash. Boring cash. The kind that just sits there and keeps you from panicking when something breaks or disappears. Only then does investing actually work the way people talk about it. Before that, it's fragile. One surprise and it collapses. And income, this part gets avoided, comes last but matters most. Not by working harder forever, by becoming harder to replace. More specific, less interchangeable. This isn't about doing more things. It's about doing fewer things in the right order. Once the sequence is right, momentum shows up without forcing it. That's usually when people say, I don't know why this feels different. It feels different because it is. Here's the part that surprises people. Change doesn't take decades to show up. It just feels that way when nothing is aligned. I've seen credit profiles shift in a single quarter. 90 days. Not perfect, just different enough that lenders start treating you like a new person. Same income, same life, different math. And wealth, real progress, doesn't require starting at 25. It requires not hesitating at 40. A 25-year window is still a long time. Longer than most careers. Longer than most marriages people thought would last forever. Long enough for mistakes. Long enough for corrections. Starting early helps. Sure, starting correctly helps more. This might sound uncomfortable, but the people who move fastest later in life aren't calm about it. They're precise. They don't drift. They don't assume time will fix things on its own. They apply pressure repeatedly in one direction, and when progress shows up, because it does, it feels compressed, like time folded in on itself. That's when the old panic changes tone. It doesn't disappear, it just stops being loud. And you realize something quietly important. You weren't out of time, you were just out of sequence. There's a pattern I've watched repeat more times than I can count. It starts with discomfort. A number that doesn't look right, a conversation you can't shake, a sentence you wish you hadn't heard. Then comes avoidance. You tell yourself you'll look at it later, after the holidays, after work slows down, after you feel more prepared. Nothing changes while you wait, except the distance. The gap gets wider. Quietly, interest doesn't pause because you're overwhelmed. Time doesn't care that you're embarrassed. Shame feeds on delay. Delay feeds on shame. They reinforce each other until not looking feels safer than looking. That's the real danger. Not bad decisions, not lack of intelligence, just the slow habit of turning away. Once you name this cycle, it loses some of its grip. You start to see it while it's happening. That moment when your hand hovers over the app and pulls back. That's the fork. I don't think we talk about this enough, but most financial damage happens in that pause. Not in dramatic mistakes, in the quiet choice to wait. Waiting feels neutral. It isn't. If this is going to change, it won't start with understanding. It starts with movement. Within the next 48 hours, do one thing, not a plan, not research. One action that changes the math. If debt is sitting there, open the account and move it. Balance transfer, payment timing, something that stops interest from piling on while you think. If savings are thin, set the transfer. Automatic, small is fine. What matters is that it happens without asking you each time. If you have a retirement account, log in and raise the contribution by 2%. Not next month. Not after reading more. Now. The size doesn't matter yet. The direction does. Motion creates a different internal signal than intention ever will. That signal is what breaks the pause. I keep thinking about that dinner table. The glasses, the noise, the way everyone sounded certain, even when they weren't. Here's what I wish someone had said to me earlier, before I learned it the hard way. The benchmark doesn't matter, the direction does. A person with a smaller number who's moving deliberately will pass a larger number that's standing still. It happens more often than anyone admits. You don't need to catch up to anyone at that table. You don't even need to leave it feeling better tonight. You just need to leave it pointed somewhere specific. I don't know exactly where you'll end up. No one does. But 10 years from now, when the same conversation comes up, the way your body reacts will be different. And that might be enough.